This is Dave Chen from SliceFilm.com. We're at the Seattle International Film Festival 2014, and I am here with the writers, the director, and the producer of Time Lapse, a new, I guess I want to say horror film? Thriller? Like, however you want to...
We usually say sci-fi thriller.
Sci-fi thriller.
Yeah.
So, tell us briefly about what Time Lapse is about.
Okay, it's basically three roommates discover their old scientist neighbor dead, and in his apartment is a machine that he built that takes pictures of the future. So it like spits out a Polaroid 24 hours in advance. Instead of reporting his dead body, they decide to hide it and try to use the camera for their benefit. But because it's a thriller, everything goes horribly wrong.
What time travel films inspired you to make this film?
There's a lot. I mean, I'll let you field that.
There's a lot more that are actually the glue in terms of, Bradley can elaborate on it, but the genesis of the camera came from a movie called Timeline, which Paul Walker starred in. It's about, I don't know, about 8 years old now. In the movie, Paul Walker's dad's a scientist. He does exactly what you were saying. He creates this time machine that he puts himself in, and he goes back in time, and he's trapped there. And all of his scientist cohorts are trying to figure out where he is and trying to rescue him. And the way they locate him is by putting a camera in the time machine and sending it back, and they're pointing it up at the sky, so it takes pictures of the constellations at night. And based on the constellations, they know where on Earth he is and also what time period he went to. And I thought that was a pretty clever idea to go and rescue him. But then the thought was, well, what if the camera itself was a time machine and not just the traditional big machine that we've all been accustomed to? And I mentioned that to Bradley on a Friday.
Pretty casually.
Yeah, just on a whim.
Yeah, we were really struggling, you know, with the idea, because we've been trying to write a contained, you know, we're huge fans of like Time Crimes. I love that movie, and we have a much larger science fiction movie we had been working on, but yeah, it was like, we need to make something like Time Crimes, or, you know, Primer's another obvious one, you know, low budget, contained. And then he came out with this idea, and then we just started kind of running with it.
Monday he came in, obviously thought over the weekend about it, and had a whole list of ideas of how to turn that seed of an idea into a contained sci-fi thriller.
Yeah, but we love 12 Monkeys, we love Back to the Future, obviously the Terminator movies even, you know, there's time travel there. We definitely, you know, we looked at Primer and we love Primer, but at the same time we kind of agreed that we didn't want ending to be too confusing, you know. I think Primer, it's almost the conceit of the movie that it gets so confusing that you need a graph, you know, to like understand all the timelines. Whereas we were like, you know, we want the ending to be a big twist, and so you want to see it again, but at the same time not get too muddy, you know. So and again, that's not a criticism of Primer. I love Primer, but that was a conversation we had for sure.
Yeah, we even dived into some. Remember the Triangle? Did you end up seeing the Triangle?
No.
I think I watched it. I liked it. There's plot holes in every time travel movie because time travel is not real and it's all based on theory. You're always going to have like a paradox or something. Something where you can sort of poke your hole into the Swiss cheese that it becomes. But if you just go along for the ride, I think you can still find them very enjoyable. Yeah. I like the Triangle. That was a good horror thriller one.
One of the things I love about your movie is you sort of there's a lot of Chekhov's items that occur throughout the film. Like you sort of put a bunch of items throughout, physical items, but also just like plot elements that then come back later and pay off.
Right.
Was that always like how when you're sort of writing something like that? Do you always think to yourself, oh, this golf club is going to come back in a major way 50 pages from now?
Right.
Or does it just you think up something cool and then go back and write it in?
I mean, I guess the boring answer is that it probably goes both ways. Like sometimes you know in advance, like, wow, we really need to set this up so that, you know, later on we can have this happen. But then sometimes you just sort of are stumbling along, you're like, oh shoot, he's got to have a gun here. Where did he get the gun, you know? Well, let's go back on the wall here. I think maybe would be a good place to bring it in, you know? But I am a huge fan of those little setups and payoffs. And I feel like Edgar Wright is just like a total Jedi. He's like the best at just seeding in like dozens and dozens, and a lot of times it's jokes, but also items or, you know, bits of dialogue that come back around. And you know, I don't know if we'll ever be there, but I definitely aspire to that level of sort of mastery of what you're talking about.
It's almost like nothing's wasted. Everything pays off. That is,
Photos are coming out of stuff that happens later on in the movie, but then you need to shoot it like it happened already.
Right.
What are some of the challenges associated with having a machine that takes photos of the future?
Right. You want to start and I'll continue?
Well, we wanted to make everything as airtight as possible, and we know this is like a repeat viewing type of film, and we can be pretty critical of, like I guess any cinephile can be critical of a film where on the rewatching of it, if you start seeing things that look like flaws, like, oh, why didn't they just take the time to make that right? It sort of pisses you off, and we're like, okay, let's try and make this on repeat viewings as airtight as possible. And one of the key elements was having photo that happened in the scene be directly from the physical scene that was shot and not a recreation of it later. So we had to create a schedule that all films are shot out of order, but this one had this unique, make sure you shoot the scene in this photo before they actually have it in their hands for the scene when they're displaying it. Did that even come out right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah. Also, I guess along those lines, we, you know, the wall of our office, and I think there's some pictures online of this, but, you know, we have the traditional note cards showing us a note card for each scene, and then we had a photo that I drew, you know, hand drew before obviously we had a camera or anything, you know, for each of the photo moments, and then sort of yarn stretching back to, okay, here's the moment in the movie that the photo is showing, because they're apart, you know, by a day, and then be like, okay, or, you know, is all the continuity lining up, like, you know, did this happen right, did that happen right, and it got so elaborate that people would come into our office and be like, oh, are you guys serial killers now? Like, what's going on? You know, it's just like crazy yarn everywhere and photos, and, you know, it was a big, and we actually had to move all of that to the set so that we could keep track of it while we were shooting. Because sometimes you know, even we, the writers, would, on a really crazy day, get confused about where we are in time and, you know, what has to be syncing up. So
here's my question for you guys. Whenever people discover a time machine, they try to use it to make money. It always ends badly.
Right.
Primer, Back to the Future 2.
Right.
Like it always, something horrible always happens.
Yeah.
When will people learn to stop using time machines to make money?
I
don't know. As long as filmmakers need conflict in time travel movies, that it's a really obvious way to go. You know, I guess human greed is just so universal that it just seems like the first place that people will think of. But you're right. It never works out.
It doesn't. Yeah.
This movie really reminded me of Time Crimes, which is one of my favorite films.
Oh man, me too.
It's like Time Crimes with a camera, basically.
Right. Yes, Time Crimes is so.
And this idea that, like Time Crimes, that's a movie that could keep going for another 2 hours. Trying to escape your fate in some way.
Right.
So you named some films that you like wanted to try to kind of evoke. Are there any time travel films that you felt like were not what you were trying to do?
Right. Movies, let's see, time travel movies that we didn't want to reference. Well, again, ones where people go back in time and are like fish out of water, experiencing new culture. I think they're cool, but that's definitely not, you know, it's not something at this point, not really subject matter that interests me. I'm much more interested in, you know, a cautionary tale where people, you know, I guess one of the big things for me in this one is that people get so obsessed with the future that they kind of screw up their present, you know, and then end up screwing up the future. And that is, you know, more the type of time travel movie that I think we, you know, are fascinated by.
We see in movies like Time Crimes how a time machine or time travel has the ability to turn a normal person into a killer.
Yeah.
So do you feel as though people, if given the power of time travel or subjected to the whims of time travel, could become killers?
Well, I guess I think about people who win the lottery, and if you read stories about people who win the lottery, you know, 99 times out of 100, it's a tragedy. You know, their life gets really, really screwed up, and they don't always end up killing someone, but I think there's been at least
They
one
get
or
killed.
two. Yeah, there was one where someone got killed.
Don't always end up killing someone.
But there was.
Like 80% of the time they kill someone.
No, but there are
It's a real
few.
stat.
There are a few stories where you hear about they ended up murdering someone, you know, and I'm not saying that's like the end result always, but I think, you know, going back to the greed thing, unfortunately, I think, you know, when you're faced with that kind of life-changing gain, sometimes it does mess with your priorities a little bit, and unless you have really strong ethical or moral or religious grounding, I don't know, I think people do have the potential for going pretty bad.
Especially when you didn't earn it. It'll mess you up when you earned it anyway, but when you didn't earn it,
the people who earned a time machine, they are all set.
Right. You have to have invented the method, the quantum physics method to travel through time.
We should be interviewing him. He's saying much funnier stuff than we are.
It's all good. So where can people find more information about you guys and your film?
You have all this in your head?
Timelapse-themovie.com is our homepage, and through there you can find our various social media sites, our Facebook and our Twitter, and then our personal. We just started tweeting this year.
Yeah.
Because we're
right. Yeah, I started. The first tweet I think got sent to me was like, "Hey, glad to see you joined Twitter. Welcome to 2006," or something. You know, I was like, "Ouch, friend." Yeah, so I'm Bradley Dean King on Twitter, and you're
BP Cooper.
Yeah.
Pretty easy.
Thank you guys for speaking with SlashFilm.com.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.